Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Dicemat, the Six-Sided Legion podcast. My name's Nate, and today we have Brett, and we're going to be taking a look at all the teams, or one very specific team, in Kill Team 3rd Edition. So, Brett, what team are we going to be looking at today?
Today, we are going to be taking a look at Corsair Voidscarred.
Yes, the pirate elves of the 40k universe. Alright, so, hopping into the team, Brett, what drew you to Corsairs? What do you like about the team?
Yeah, so what I liked at the beginning of this edition, because it took me a little while to kind of figure out like what I actually wanted to play, and one of the things that drew me to Corsairs was their speed, right? Like they're super fast. I mean, they have 7-inch moves, of course, as an elf team, and then their team ability, Eldari Raiders, just gives everybody a free dash. So they're pseudo 3 APL. So that hasn't changed from last edition, but like they're so fast, and I love that about them.
Yeah, they can really zip around the board. It's surprising. It catches you off guard a lot of the time, where it's like, oh, they can get up to there, and with 7-inch move normally, they just can skirt up the board as fast as they want. It's kind of crazy.
Right, like you're talking about a 10-inch move dash. Like it's, I mean, on Vulcus, with how heavy things are, just having mobility is just so important. Especially like if you want to climb stuff too, having that 7-inch move is so big. And then
because verticality plays a big part now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can just like use your dash to get closer. Like if you need to move just a little bit to get to like a different spot to climb, since you can't combine the climb and or the move and dash anymore, But they do have another faction ability too, which I often forget
rifles.
about. Yeah, I can't tell you. I think I've maybe used the rule once in all the games I have with the team. Yeah, because it's just not useful. So you have to be shooting with a shuriken rifle or a ranger long rifle, which is on the sniper, and you get accurate one if you haven't basically done like a reposition. So like you could do a dash. You can do your dash and then shoot, and if you do that, you get accurate one. And that's fine and dandy. The thing is, at least the loadout that I've played with, and I think most people play with, there's like no shuriken rifles on the team. And then
there's not many.
Yeah, like you just don't take them. Like it's just not necessary. Like there's other stuff that's better. And then your Ranger long rifle as well. It's like I'd rather be rolling the dice trying to get the mortal wounds, if I even take him. But that's something we'll talk about a little later.
Yeah, we'll get into a detailed look at the operatives in just a moment. But it's definitely one of those teams where it's like, it's a specialist team. You're going to bring all the specialists, and rarely are you going to bring just the generic warrior.
Yeah, so actually, surprisingly, speaking of warriors, the warrior ability is still relatively useful, and there are definitely plenty of options where I have taken warriors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but you know what, though? It is a good thing to bring up here that one of the big changes from last edition with the picking your operatives is you can actually take the heavy gunner and the regular gunner now. So
could you not do that last edition?
You couldn't do it last edition. So, and you can still only have one of the piercing 2 options, so you can't have like a wraith cannon and a
Dark Lance?
Blaster. Blaster is the one.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. So you can't have, both of those, of course. Like many other teams, are limited on the amount of piercing they can take. But it's still like that's very good, and I think that's a lot of the reason why you're probably not taking warriors is because you can do that now.
Exactly, and they do have a ton of specialists. There are 9 models in the entire team, and you get to bring. Oh, it's actually more than that. How many models are there in total?
So you can take 9, but you have, of course, your leader, and then there's, I believe, 9 options for. So, like, you're always kind of leaving a specialist.
There are actually 10 additional specialists that you can take. That does include the warrior. So, there is some options where you can do it. So, now is, I think, a good time to kind of look at the team as itself. So, its archetypes are Infiltration and Recon, 2 of, I think, the more stronger of the archetypes this edition.
Certainly, especially with Recon. I mean, Recon's just has a lot of really good stuff.
Very good.
It fits the team well. Honestly, I haven't really messed with Infiltration on the team. I just feel like it's just not as strong as Recon. It's just so much easier to take like Confirm Kill or what do you call it? Planting the beacons. Yeah, plant beacon. Yep. Yeah. They're just really good for the team because the team is so fast. Like, it's easy for them to do it and not really worry about it. Like, if you need to get somebody on the other side of the board, yeah, like, you just send it 10 inches. Boom, plant a beacon. So, I mean, it's easy to do, right?
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to actually selecting operatives for the team, obviously, you have your one commander. This one is the Corsair Voidscarred. They have 2 different options you can bring them. You can bring Shuriken Rifle, Shuriken Pistol, and Power Weapon. Do you get all of those, or...?
So for that one, it's... You either take the Shuriken Rifle... Or no, yeah, he does, yeah. He gets both the Shuriken Rifle and the Shuriken Pistol, because that's one of the interesting things about this team as well, is everybody has a Shuriken Pistol as well on top of their normal gun.
Man, I wish Legionaries or Nemesis Claw had that. Oh,
yeah, it'd be nice for a lot of teams to have just like a weaker like pistol option that they could use, right? But like, I mean, even the heavy gunners got one, and the sniper on this team, right? Like you can, right. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool.
Interesting. And then the other option is the Neuro Disruptor and Power Weapon.
Yeah, and that's usually what I go with. Pretty much every game. It's just the Neuro Disruptor's great. It's got piercing. It's got stun. And when we talk about like the specific operative abilities later, I think that'll also kind of shed some light on why that's just so good. But
and then with the rest of the team, you can bring 8 other Voidscarred operatives. From those, you have the Fate Dealer, the Gunner, a Heavy Gunner, the Grenathi, a Kernite Hunter, a Shade Runner, a Soul Weaver, a Starstorm Duelist, a Warrior, and a Wayseeker. And then, like many other teams, unless you're taking a Warrior, you can only have one of each operative type. So that's the overview of the team. Let's take a deeper look at actually what each operative does now, as that's kind of the meat and potatoes of any kill team. You can kind of see what they do, but until you actually dig into the actual profiles, it's kind of hard to see what's make this team special. Okay, so let's actually start digging into the models, and what's the best place to start? Probably with the leader. So, actually looking at the Voidscarred Felarch, that's the actual leader's name. Brett, what does he do?
Yeah, so he is just like any other standard leader, comes with an extra wound on top of everybody else, so he's got 9 wounds. And then, of course, we didn't really mention before, but standard elf team, so 4-up save, so, pretty swingy with the defense saves, of course.
Yeah, 50-50.
Yeah, otherwise he, like we mentioned, he can take a Shuriken Rifle, which is 4s on 3s, 3-4 in rending. And if you do take that, you also get a Shuriken Pistol on him, which is the same profile, but with 8-inch range. And then,
but you actually prefer his other profile.
I always go with his other profile, and that's the Neuro Disruptor, which is it's a 8-inch pistol, of course, which is 4s on 3s, 4-5 with piercing 1 and stun. So it's a pretty hard hitter. It's got stun, which makes it great for taking away APL as long as you can land a crit. And then of course you're always getting the power weapon, standard power weapon, 4s on 3s, 4-6 lethal 5.
Yeah, that's one surprising thing about the team. They actually have a lot of power weapons.
A lot of power weapons. A lot of them.
It's a theme.
Yes. So they're, for a mid-range team, they've got solid shooting and they have solid fighting. And of course, other things that can buff it up as well. So,
So
definitely no slouches.
Abilities, no, not at all. But looking into his abilities, Brett, what does he do?
Yeah, so he has the Veteran Raider ability. So once per turning point, he can perform a 1 AP action for free during his activation instead of doing the free dash. So, which is really nice to have, because even if he's like stunned, you can still pretty much just be a 2 APL model. Or, you can... you don't have to give him an APL from your comms, who we'll get to later, but you can always charge fight, and then shoot something.
Yeah, you go from a pseudo 3 APL guy to just an actual 3 APL.
Yeah, like he's just always good. I don't know, he's just a solid model. And then, now his other ability, though, is, I think also just where he shines, and this is a once per battle. It's called One Step Ahead. So... once per battle, when an enemy operative is performing an action. So, if he is ready, if your Felarch is ready, you can use the rule, and if you do, you roll a d6. If your result is higher than the enemy operative's APL stat, you can interrupt them, and you can immediately perform a free fight or a free shoot into the activating operative. So, basically, if you have this guy set up in a way where an enemy operative is going to have to at least spend one action to move to a spot where he can, shoot him, or if he's just going to charge him, of course, that counts. And then you can use this ability, and if you, roll presumably, a 3 up in most cases, or against elites, 4 up, still a 50-50. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Then you get to either shoot them first, assuming you're engaged, because unfortunately you cannot change your order for this ability. So in order to do the shoot, you're going to have to be engaged already. But otherwise, the fight's just great. You just get to do a fight. So you become the attacker now. That's just a great ability. Of course, if you do this, though, if you're successful, then you do lose an AP. But again, you have the Veteran Raider ability. So, he's still basically 2 APL. You can just, instead of, if you don't need the free dash, you can do something else instead.
This rule solid. It will catch you off guard, especially if it's your first or second time playing against this team. And you'll be like, oh, shoot, where you'll go to do something, and instead he will either shoot or fight you, and you'll be like, well, shoot, I don't really know what to do now. It's situational. It's not always going to come out, but when it does, you're kind of left there going, oh,
yes.
Shoot, what do I do now? It catches you off guard.
No, it's definitely a gotcha. It's especially good against elites too, because if you're set up for it, if you can force an elite to do a move dash or move open a door and then try to do something to you, you can potentially interrupt. And if you're doing a shoot and you get a 6, you stun them. And if you stun them mid activation, they lose that last AP. They just end their activation.
So for most operatives, it's going to be they get to do one thing, and then you can stun them, and then that's it for them.
Yeah, hopefully, right? You still need to get a 6,
that's
of course.
Best case scenario.
Yeah. So he's got. He's great. He's got really great abilities. Hopefully, he's a high value target. So you really want to be keeping him around.
Yes. Now, going from a model you love to one you're not a big fan of, let's take a look at the Fate Dealer.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm just kind of opposed to snipers this edition in the moment, but he is the team sniper. So he has the standard sniper profiles, right? So
yep.
He has a ranger long rifle. The mobile profile is just a bolter. 4s on 3s, 3-4. No special rules, nothing. Then you've got the stationary profile, which of course has heavy. One of the nice things is it does have silent, so you can always shoot with it from conceal, assuming you're not moving. Personally, not my favorite thing, but it is 4s on 2s.
Especially with a team with a lot of movement, too.
Exactly.
So not be moving kind of hurts.
Yes, absolutely. But, I guess if you do get the shot, it's 4s on 2s, 3-3, devastating 3. Mm-hmm. So, of course, then after that, you just can't move, so...
Yep.
Otherwise, like I said, he does come with a shuriken pistol, though. So that's pretty cool. So he can still at least use that.
They can move around and shoot.
He can. And I think that's, maybe some of the ideas I've got for this guy, which I really just haven't used yet, which we'll talk about later. But other than that, he has fists. This is just kind of the standard melee weapon for Corsairs if they don't have, a better weapon. They're 3s on 3s, 2-3. Right,
yep,
nothing
standard
crazy.
Kind of fists. They're not very powerful.
Right. And then he has also just the similar sniper abilities as a lot of the other ones. He ignores the saturate weapon rule, and he can double retain for cover if he is able to, or just retain a critical for a success. So definitely a good ability. However, if you're going to be shooting from concealed with this guy, which is what you're hoping to do with him, I don't know how much it's going to come up, but... he exists.
Yeah, he's there, and he's kind of an outlier in a team that has a lot of... This team has a lot of melee tricks to it. Don't get me wrong, they do have great shooting, but for a team that's very, very, we're going to move up across the board, and then we're going to, fight, or we're going to do some sneaky kind of Eldari stuff, this guy kind of gets left behind.
Yeah, I think so. I literally leave him behind in so many games.
Yeah,
I
right.
just straight up don't take him. Mm-hmm. He's okay on Into the Dark, though. I will say there's some move dash guard potential. Okay. And that kind of goes for all snipers, because you get the heavy profile
in
a guard. So, he could be good for that. But
well, we can take a look at that when we get into the specifically like the theory crafting, kind of the tactics of these guys.
For sure.
Now, moving on to again, model you like, model you don't like. Back up to models you do like. We'll take a look at the gunners.
Yes. So of course, this is the standard like Eldar gunner. So like the same, I guess, Drukhari as well, because Hand of the Archon have the exact same gunners. So
elf gunners.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got the two options are the blaster or the shredder. And these two have never really made sense. So the blaster is the one that is a single target weapon. And this is the piercing one. So we've got 4s on 3s, 4-5, piercing 2. So from last edition, they toned down the damage. So it's 4-5 instead of 5-6. Still quite strong with the piercing 2.
Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of piercing 2 anymore.
No, you don't. And this is, this team, luckily, actually has a decent amount. So we've got that. And then the shredder... this is the one that does or can target multiple enemies. It is 4s on 3s, 4-5, rending with Torrent 2. So that's changed a decent amount from last edition. Last edition it was 5 attacks on 3s. However, it was only 3-5 damage. So it's gotten a bit of a damage boost, just less dice. And I'm going to tell you right now that on this team, I mean, that thing is a crit machine, especially on Into the Dark. When you mix it with some of their other stuff, it's just quite powerful. And then, of course, they have the Shuriken Pistol. Yep, everybody's got it. Always great to have. Don't know if you're ever going to really use it on these guys, but hey, you've got it. And then they've got
fists. Weird to opt for the pistol instead of the actual weapon.
Right, maybe there's a situation. I don't know what it would be, but you've got the option.
Yes, and then as you said, he has fists.
Yeah.
Okay. From the gunner, moving on to his big brother, the heavy gunner.
Yeah, so we can actually take both of them at the same time, which, I mean...
That's kind of unique.
To be honest, that's what I opt for, instead of just taking the Fate Dealer. Now, your heavy gunner has some pretty sweet options as well. He's got the Shuriken Cannon, which of course has 2 profiles. The focused one, which is 5 attacks on 3s, 4-5, heavy, dash only, and rending. Then he's got a sweeping profile on it, which is just 1 less attack, so down to 4, but it comes with Torrent 1. Same profile otherwise, so you could potentially snag a couple models with it if you're lucky. Then he's got, again, Shuriken Pistol on both profiles, so you can always have that. But the other weapon choice is always scary to elite players, or really to anything. Yes. I mean, scary whatever it gets pointed
at. It's scary to everything.
Pretty much. And that's the Wraith Cannon. It is 4s on 3s, 6-3, Devastating 4, Heavy Dash only, and Piercing 2. So that thing's got some real kick to it. Yeah, it's very useful in a lot of cases. And then again, the heavy gunners just have fists. So that's the gist of them. They hit hard. They have the ability to hit multiple models depending on what weapon you're taking, but it does exist. And this is usually how you're killing those bigger models, that are more stubborn and have a lot of wounds.
Basically, almost all elites.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Now on to the Kurnathi. Let's take a look at what he does.
So the Kurnathi, this is where your power weapons start to come in. So the Kurnathi is mainly a melee model. Of course, he's got a Shuriken Pistol, but he really shines in melee with his dual power weapons. He's 4s on 3s, 4-6, lethal 5, and also ceaseless. So,
yikes.
Very reliable. Very reliable. Now, what makes him even more reliable is his abilities. So he has Blade Master. So when he has performed a charge, if he incapacitates an operative, he can then use any remaining distance he had from the charge up to 3 to do a dash right afterwards.
Oh.
Which is, that's just a great ability. If you don't have to use the full length of your charge, super nice to charge into something. If you get the kill and you're able to, you use whatever distance you got left to dash back to safety.
Yeah, just reposition into cover.
Yeah, and then on the other side of it, if he's the one being charged, he has the Bladed Stance ability, which just means when he's fighting or retaliating, he can resolve a success before the normal order, and it must be used as a parry. So the key thing here, though, is that it's fighting or retaliating. So if you're being charged, he can parry first, but also if he's just fighting somebody, he can parry first and then resolve another die. So he could theoretically, parry, do something else, or parry, strike, whatever it might be. Makes him quite strong with the power.
Dice is very, very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Immediately. It swings the battle slightly into your favor.
Right. It's almost like a win more in a lot of circumstances. But, there are some where it can really make a fight. Like, you're fighting against, like, a model with, like, 5 dice, and they drop, like, 1 or 2 dice. Like, having that pre-parry, because he's so reliable, like, with Ceaseless, he has a lot of... He can get a lot of hits really easily. And potentially a lot of crits, even.
Yeah, with Lethal 5, even, a third of all your attacks will be, or could be, lethal hits or crits.
If not more, too, because there's going to be some other... there's going to be other things that are... that help the team get more reliability as well.
This guy is scary. He's a blender. He will chop up anything he gets into melee range of.
Definitely.
On to another very powerful melee model. We'll go to the Kernite Hunter.
Yeah, so this guy is actually my favorite model on the team, because his abilities are just... They're really cool.
They're cool, but they're very annoying to be on the receiving end.
They're very annoying to be on the other end. Yeah, so first off, with his ranged weapons, he, of course, has Shuriken Pistol, and then he has the, I believe it's a Falshu, I think it's pronounced, Falshu, something like that.
Something like that.
I've never... That's not true. I have fired with this before. In, like, the first turning point where you're not charging anything. But other than that...
The Falchu is the bird.
Yeah. So it's the bird. It's 4s on 3s, 1-2, rending...
It's not going to do a lot of damage.
No. Rending, saturate, seek light, and silent. So potentially a first turning point. Sure, and it's okay. Like, you can maybe find a target first turning point with it. And then he also has a power weapon, so standard power weapon.
Yeah, that's
profile.
his big weapon.
Now the thing is, though, Nate, this is why you don't shoot with the bird after the first turning point.
Yes.
Because he has the Falshu's bond. So the first time in each turning point that he's retaliating, if he hasn't shot with the bird, he gets to resolve the attack dice first in that fight action. Or when he's retaliating. So he basically gets to become attacker.
Yeah, he gets fight first, which is very, very powerful.
So it's just very good for countering melee models or like if whatever the case may be. That's just a very strong ability. But then you consider his other ability, the Erudite Hunter. Now this is a strategic gambit, and this is what makes me like this guy so much. Is in the strategy phase, you get to pick an enemy operative within 9 inches of him. 9 inches is a huge range. It's not wholly within, it's not visible and within 9. It's none of that. It's just within 9.
Yeah, his tippy toe has to be within that range.
Exactly. You pick that guy, and as soon as that operative in the turning point performs an action in which it moves, so a dash, reposition, a charge, whatever, then this guy gets to immediately perform a free reposition as long as he ends closer to that operative, or a free charge as long as he ends within control range of it.
Yes.
So that that's such a good shutdown ability. Like, it really helps you kind of maintain board control. And if you target the right model, this thing it almost shuts down Melta, because Melta's just like, they have to be within 6 to shoot you. So if he has to move to get within that range to shoot, you can just charge in and then fight him. And guess what? If you haven't shot with your bird, you're resolving the first die.
Yes, so he is a very, very strong model.
Yes.
Much like the Knafi, I've lost a lot of guys to this guy.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. And that this is a strategic phase thing, Nate. So he does this every turning point he's alive.
Yes,
pretty
which
sweet.
Is very, very annoying because it's not just a one time or when he activates. He can do it every time.
And not to mention, too, this is also a free reposition or charge. So, he's getting basically free action out of this as well.
Yeah, so it goes up to, again, a pseudo 3 APL.
Right. That's just a great ability. I think he's just easily my favorite operative.
On to another great operative. Now, I've played this team a few times. I really like this operative, especially on Into the Dark. We'll get to that later, but the Shade Runner is very, very fun.
Yeah, so the Shade Runner has some interesting abilities.
They're unique
for sure. Yeah, he first off with the profiles, he of course has a shuriken pistol. He also comes with throwing blades. Now these are basically, if you want to keep them concealed, this is a silent shooting attack. It is a 6-inch range. It's 4s on 3s, 2/4 damage. So nothing too crazy, but
it's chip damage.
It's chip, right? Yeah, and it keeps him. You can stay concealed. That's nice. Now he also has Hekatari blades for his melee. So this is 4s on 3s, 3/5, ceaseless, and lethal 5. Not quite a power weapon, right? But it's still quite reliable.
Yeah, this is not. This is actual damage.
Yes. Now, the other thing is
what makes him crazy, though. His next thing.
Yeah. So this guy, he's highly maneuverable, and I know the whole team is. We've been talking about that, but this guy is on another level. So he has Blink Pack. Blink Pack is whenever he performs a charge, fallback, or reposition, he can. It's essentially a teleport. It's a warp jump, is what they call it in the rules. So instead of moving it, you remove him from the kill zone and you set him back up wholly within 7 inches of his original location. And this is a horizontal distance. We're not talking about height. Basically, he climbs for free, we'll say, right? Because it's just
he can go anywhere.
Anywhere. And now the thing that many people are surprised about, including myself, is some reason in this edition they've included the ability to allow him to teleport through Gallo Dark walls.
He's one of 2 operatives, I believe, that can actually do this.
I think he's the only operative.
Oh, I thought there was one more, but
no, I think that's the weird thing, right? He's the one guy I think who can do it. Maybe it is 2. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I thought there was one more, whether it was Breacher Boy or
it's definitely not
something
because the weird thing is that makes more sense, right?
Yeah, it does because creating the hole in the walls. This, however. We're getting into kind of semantics here.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful, especially into the dark. Because it doesn't matter how you set up your models. You can have the perfect hatchway fight set up. You could be on guard. It really doesn't matter.
Right. This dude's just going to teleport through and ruin your plan.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he does. That's why he is so good, especially in Into the Dark.
Yes. So, and the nice thing about him, too, is he has an ability where he can do damage, risk-free. So he has a slicing attack, which is whenever he's using his Blink Pack, when he's doing it on a reposition, as long as part, just the tiniest fraction of your base goes over an enemy operative, it goes over their base just a tiny bit, he can do I think last edition this was a different ability. But in this edition, he does a D3 plus 2 damage. Yeah, so anywhere from 3 to 5 damage. Right. And he does this as long as he doesn't end within engagement range because it has to be a reposition, right? So you can just kind of go over the very edge of their base and then come back or go forward, whatever it is, teleport through a wall, whatever. It's a very safe way to get in some damage. And you have 7 inches of distance to do that with. And you can also do your free dash to move closer if you need to before you do it, or do it after. So the dash is the one thing which doesn't let you teleport, but you have that free dash to help you move a little bit before you do it.
Now, a quick clarifying question here: does that damage apply to every model you go through, or just one?
So this is just for one. You do have to pick one model. It's not everything, so you can't try to cross over multiple things. Unfortunately,
that would be insane, though.
That would be a little crazy.
We have a line of guys just.
Yeah. But this dude is he's so maneuverable. You can get him places really fast. He's great for attempting to get around vantage terrain when it comes to, so if you're trying to kill a sniper, for example, if
I
somebody's
was actually
really
just
stuck
about to bring that up in Volcus in that second story or that third story.
Yes. So if if you're able to, if your opponent has left you enough room to fit your base up there so you can actually stand, you can just teleport up there and fight off whatever's up there, right? Like it's really
I remember
good
I lost a Sanctus sniper to that in one of our games, and that was just kind of a feels bad moment where I'm like, oh, it ignores all vertical distance as well.
Yep, he's going up there. Like I do like to put him around that piece just for that. Mm-hmm. So
no, it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Now moving on to another fun model, we have the Soul Weaver.
So the Soul Weaver is weirdly enough, he's actually your comms and healer.
Yeah, so it's kind of a 2-for-1 in this one.
Yeah, so and he's good at it. He's good at what he does. He comes with a shuriken pistol, and then he's got a power weapon. So weirdly, your comm/healer has a power weapon. He's reliable in melee.
They are very... This guy does a lot.
He does.
There's a lot to unpackage.
He does. So and then he has 2 unique actions, which is the Soul Channel. This is his comms ability. It's just the standard within 6 invisible at an APL. And then he has Soul Heal. So his healing is long range. He has a 6-inch heal range, and it's 2d3. It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid. Like, I mean, obviously you can roll low on that, but there's the possibility you heal up to 6 damage as well.
Yeah, you could go from injured to full health pretty quickly.
Yeah, like it's definitely doable. In 6-inch range, he doesn't have to be up there with your guys. I mean, he could be. He's got a power weapon, right? So he's no pushover.
No, he is very, very possible for him to go up into melee.
Absolutely.
But he can do a lot. They are... Again, it kind of blows my mind the amount of power weapons this team has. It's
a lot of power weapons.
It's very scary. That is one thing. We'll talk about, like, going into elites. The amount of power weapons is a bit of a deterrent for melee.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they can hold their own pretty easily.
For sure.
All right, next up, we have our Starstorm Duelist. Again, another very cool model.
So this guy is probably one of the bigger threats that people try to eliminate as soon as they can. His double kill potential is incredibly high.
Yes, it's very high.
So basically, here's what he does, right? So he's got fists in melee, so he's a pushover in melee. He's not too good at that, right? But that's not what matters. He has 2 pistols. Of course, the shuriken pistol. And then he has the fusion pistol, and this thing is super strong. It's 4s on 3s, 5-3, 3-inch range, keep in mind, devastating 3, and piercing 2. So this is potentially your second source of piercing 2, should you need it. And it has the ability to do a pistol barrage, so he can shoot twice for 1 AP, as long as he's using both pistols. So obviously he needs to be within 3 to use the fusion pistol. Now that's that's not hard for him to do. He has a 10-inch range to move dash. As long as you can get within range to use the fusion pistol, and then potentially set yourself up with another target with the shuriken pistol. Like the guy shooting twice, probably deleting something with the fusion pistol, and trying to get
doing some chip damage with the shuriken.
Right. Like he's there to set up for threat. Like a threat in the 2nd or 3rd turning point, whatever it is, and slingshot him forward to make good trades. He's a monster, and if he's not dealt with, he will continue to mess up the enemy team.
Yes, very, very powerful. Now, on to, personally, my most hated model. I have had so many issues with this guy. The Wayseeker.
Yes.
This guy can do a lot.
And actually, quickly, before we talk about the Wayseeker, I just wanted to mention, too, that the Starstorm Duelist can actually also shoot in engagement range. So,
that is also another good thing to mention.
So he can't do it to retaliate. When he's retaliating, it's just his fists. But, like, he could potentially charge and then, like, shoot once with, like, a fusion pistol. So that is definitely something to consider. But, continuing onwards, Wayseeker is absolutely a huge part of this team. Actually gives it
so powerful.
It's very, very powerful. This is a high-value target as well. I'd say he is probably one of the top 3 that you want to try to kill. Playing against these guys, of course. So he has a lot of stuff. Last edition, he had... Man, I don't know. It was like 4 psychic actions or something. Maybe 3. But 2 of them have been converted into shooting attacks. So the first one is Freezing Grasp. This thing is basically just here to stun, and it's almost a guaranteed stun. It's 4s on 3s, 1-2, severe, silent, and stun. So as long as you're getting 1-3, you're stunning because of the severe.
Yeah, and there's some pretty good chances you're going to get at least 1 through.
Absolutely. And, I mean, you could do it from Silent. It's great. Otherwise, he has Lightning Strike. Now, last edition, this was basically a long-range crack grenade. Now, this edition, it's been changed. It is 4s on 3s, 4/3, 2-inch devastating 2. So, I mean, we're looking at basically 4 or 5 damage profile. Potentially, you're damaging some stuff nearby, if you get the crits. And then, of course, Shuriken Pistol. And then in melee, he's not too shabby. He's 4s on 3s, 3/5 with shock.
Yeah. Basically a power weapon.
Close, yeah. I mean, it's not fists, right? Like, it's all right. Now, the other thing that makes this operative so good is he has 2 unique actions that are psychic actions. The one is Warp Fold. Now, this one's pretty big brain. There's some cool moves you can do with it, but it is hard to maximize its potential. And this is basically, you pick 2 operatives visible to this guy and within 5 inches, and you can swap their locations. Now, the thing is with this is if one of them is already activated, if that activated operative has performed like a charge, a fallback, or a reposition, then the other operative that was swapped places with, if it isn't activated, or if it hasn't already, then when it does activate, it cannot perform any of those actions. So it can only do like its dash, for example. Obviously now if you don't do any of those things with the people you teleported, or if you haven't already, then it's free range. They can do whatever. So there's some potential there, of course, which I think we'll talk about later, but it's, it's tricksy. It's very tricksy.
Yeah, it's one of those cool, it's a toolbox item. You'll see in play where you're like, oh, I could do this right here. And you'll start to see, and then you could kind of plan to set up for that eventually. Yeah,
you're probably not going to use it every game, right? Maybe. I mean, if you're, I don't know, there's definitely some ability to use it. You combine him with the Shade Runner, maybe he's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, his next ability, though, you will be using every game.
Yes, you'll be using every game, every turning point. So this is the Warding Shield. This is basically, you're picking an operative within 6 invisible, and you are giving them a Just a Scratch. And this is a Just a Scratch that works on crits as well. So, basically, they're ignoring a die of damage. Obviously, in melee, this is whatever comes first, but in shooting, the defender decides. So you're probably ignoring a crit. And that lasts until the Wayseeker is killed, till he activates, or until he does the action again, whatever comes first, right? So, realistically, you're
for a while.
Right, you're going to put it on somebody, you're going to wait on your Wayseeker, and then once that operative is activated who has the buff, you're going to give it to somebody else. And it's going to help keep your elves alive.
Yes, it's great utility.
Yes.
And it is infuriating where you'll get this great shot off. You'll be like, yeah, I'll just scratch here. And you're like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, man. It helps. It can save a lot of damage, that's for sure.
And then last, but certainly not least, we have the Humble Warrior.
Yeah, man. Warriors are solid on this team. They're
not bad.
I found myself taking them into quite a few matchups, actually.
Ooh.
And these guys come in 2 flavors. And again, I will say I don't take the Shuriken rifle loadout. Maybe there's some use for it, but I just haven't found it. So Shuriken rifle is the classic 4-on-3, 3/4 rending, and then you get the fists with it as well. Now, what I like to do though is take the warriors with the Shuriken pistol and the power weapon, because I mean you get another power weapon.
This team already has a lot of power weapons. Here's another one.
Right. Here's a warrior with a power weapon, and then
that doesn't happen that often.
Does not. And then their ability for just being the normal guy is Prowling Raiders. They can use the Capricious Flight or Light Fingers for 0 CP, which will, assuming they're the operative that you pick to use it on, and we'll talk about those here momentarily.
Yes, but those are fantastic abilities.
Yes, they're great to have. Very useful. These are certainly not operatives to just look at and, think you don't need to deal with them. They're definitely useful.
Yeah, especially with the power weapon, they are no slouch. So, we have looked at all the operatives, and again, a lot of them are really, really fantastic. Now we can look at their ploys and their equipment. Okay, so now let's kind of dive into their secondary ability rules. By that, they're strategic ploys and kind of all of that. So, Brett, would you like to take a look at the first one?
For sure, yeah. So their first strategy ploy is Plunderers. So this one's it's situational for sure, but it's a very, very useful thing to have. I feel like defensively, it's always been very good to me. And it's a little odd because you do not exactly know what you're getting when you go into it, but you're rolling a D3, and then whatever the result of the D3 is, you can perform that many free dashes, whatever order of your choice, with that many operatives. So, if you need to dash away from things, or toward things even, you can use this to do so. You can't do this on the first turning point. And then also, anybody that you dash with this does not get access to their free dash in that coming turning point.
Yeah, it's kind of taking that dash from them, and you're getting to spend it early.
Right, so basically you can, dash in the strategy phase, but you're losing your free one later.
It's useful if you want to, if you have a few guys who are kind of out of position, you could be like, okay, I can fix this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, the next one is Piratical Profiteers. This one is very, very powerful. So essentially, whenever a friendly Voidscarred operative is shooting or fighting or retaliating, if that operative is within engagement range of a objective marker, your weapon gains the Balanced special rule, which this is very, very powerful.
Yeah, and one thing to note, it's not just you. It's also the enemy operative that you're shooting or fighting. And this counts for mission tokens as well. So we're talking like plant beacons as well.
Really?
Or recon, or confirmed kill tokens,
better.
All of that.
Wow, I completely forgot that those would count towards it.
Alright, so next up we have mobile engagement. So this one's actually pretty dang useful against a lot of shooting teams, because basically whenever an operative is shooting, one of your Corsairs, if you have performed an action in which you moved, again, very easy to do, very mobile team, you get to re-roll a defense die. So that's super helpful in dealing with those swingy 4-ups. Sometimes that can make or break keeping a guy alive. You're moving him around anyways, so it's pretty likely you're going to get one of those re-rolls. Solid ploy, very straightforward.
Alright, and for the last of the strategic ploys, we have Outcasts. This one seems pretty solid. Whenever a friendly Voidscarred operative is more than 5 inches from other friendly operatives, its weapons have the punishing weapon roll.
Super reliable. Super reliable.
Very, very powerful.
It's you'd think more than 5 inches is maybe a difficult thing to deal with, but it's not on a team that's so mobile. You're also talking about all of their weapons get punishing.
Yeah, shooting and melee.
That's
which
so
is
good.
Crazy. I thought it was just melee. So
no, yeah, it's just all weapons. So imagine you got a lethal 5 power weapon, you're likely getting a crit, and then therefore you drop one. Not anymore. Punishing is just going to give it back to you. It's so good for reliability.
Yeah, and those power weapons just get so much stronger off of that.
They really do. And there's so many other things too, the Shredder, right? Yeah. On Into the Dark, it's got Torrent, so it's got lethal 5. So slingshot your gunner forward. Boom, he's got lethal 5, Torrent, punishing, maybe a reroll for the piratical profiteers. There's a lot. And that pretty much, that's all those strategy ploys. They're all solid.
Yeah, moving into the firefight ploys. Brett, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, let's do it. So I actually really, really love this one. I don't get to use it a whole lot, but it is gotcha and potentially a super strong one. So opportunistic fighters. You use this when an enemy operative performs a fallback action, and before it moves, you inflict 2d3 damage on that operative for each Corsair within its control range. Yeah. So, potentially, you can do a lot of D3s worth of damage, in the perfect scenario, right? But it's pretty cool that it multiplies.
Yeah, and, if there is, a situation, it could be pretty deadly. Then again, I'd rather just let that operative die. It's not worth it.
At that point, yeah, probably. But you know what, though? You forget about it, and then you say, hey, I'm doing fallback. That's a good point, yeah. And they're like, bam, potentially 6 damage.
That's insane. Next up is Lightfingers. This one is also very, very good. Essentially, for Corsair Voidscarred operatives, that when you have an enemy operative within control range, you no longer are prevented from performing the pickup or mission action. insanely powerful right there.
Yeah, this is one of those changes to this edition, because you can't do mission actions anymore in control range, right? Like, you used to be able to loot and secure and do all that stuff, but you can't now. So, and this is one of the ploys that warriors get to do for free.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It kind of blows my mind.
All right, next up is the other one that warriors get to do for free. This is Capricious Flight, and this is super simple. It's a fallback for 1 less AP. That's it, straightforward.
Yeah, it's powerful, but like it's not that crazy. Like it has useful moments.
Definitely helpful for maneuvering. You still get your free dash, so you could do a 1 AP fallback and then a free dash afterwards and still do something else. So, I mean, it's definitely useful. Hopefully you don't need to do a lot of falling back.
Hopefully.
You might.
And then on to the last one, Contemptuous Adventurer. This one it seems pretty decent. When a Corsair Voidscarred operative is activated for the first time in the turning point, if it's more than 5 inches from any other friendly operatives, the first time it either shoots or fights, its weapons gain the Relentless weapon rule.
Yeah, so that's... I'll be honest, I don't find myself using this one a whole lot because it has to be the first operative of the turning point. So, I mean, I could see it... I mean, there's definitely uses you really want it. Like, I mean, maybe you get, like, one of your gunners gets, like, a, multi-hit shot or something. For sure, you could use it then. Right? It's really easy to get that. Now, one thing to mention, though, this is not like the one play where you have to be outside of 5 when you do the action. This is you have to start your activation outside of 5.
Yes.
So you can't just move there. You have to already be there.
Yeah, it's very situational.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest. I don't know if Relentless is super necessary on this team, because like I said, we already have like ways to get balanced and ways to get punishing. Like, the reliability is already there. So I just don't know if it's worth spending for Relentless. Maybe it is in some cases, but it's nice to have. You could potentially use it if you really need it.
Yeah. Then lastly, we have the faction equipment. Brett, do you want to take a look at these?
Yeah, sure. So first up is the Dieternal Mantles. So this is a very straightforward one. It's everybody has these if they're being shot by a weapon that has Blast or Torrent, they get a reroll in defense. Nice against certain teams that have a lot of that. Otherwise, the other ability is they ignore the X-inch Devastating X. So basically that's Splash for those of you from last edition. They ignore Splash unless they are the primary target.
Which that can be really useful into some teams where they have a lot of Splash, Torrent as well. Very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, what's the next one, Brett?
So next is Mistfield. This one's just great. This is... You get to ignore, once per turning point, you can ignore an instance of Piercing 1, or, of course, Piercing 2 would go down to Piercing 1. Now, there's a stipulation, though. You do have to be outside of 3 inches of whoever's shooting you. So if they have the ability to move within that range, you can't use it. But it is really nice for those long-range shots.
Yeah, for the majority of shots in the game.
Right, yeah.
Next up is Runes of Guidance. What does this one do, Brett?
So this one is... I love this one. I probably take this all the time. This is for your Wayseeker and your Soul Weaver. All of their unique actions are psychic actions, and this is the healing, the extra APL, the the Justice Scratch. Notably, not the Swap Places one. This does not work for that one. But for all of those, you can add 3 inches to the distance requirement once per turning point. So if you never need to, someone's a little far, because again, the team is very maneuverable. They're moving fast, they're moving far. So, if you ever need to give a buff with one of those guys, instead of a 6-inch range, now you've got a 9-inch range. Very helpful.
And last but not least, we have Star Charts. What does this one do, Brad?
So this one is super swingy. I personally really like this one. So it's strategic phase thing. You roll a d3. If the result is higher than the current turning point, you gain a CP, and then That's it. You can only gain 1 CP from this. So basically, you have 2 chances to get an extra CP, and if you don't get it by the 3rd turning point, you're just not getting it because it has to be higher than the current turning point. So turning point 1, you really just want to roll a 2 or 3 on the D3, and then if you don't get it, 2nd turning point, you got to get a little lucky, roll a 3. But I mean, it's nice because a lot of these ploys are really good, so you're probably spending CP, right? Like I've spent quite a bit on this team, so I guess I like this if there's nothing better to take. It's just swingy.
Yeah, I think it's a better version of Higher Tech Circle's Tesseract Cube.
I don't know, it's so swingy though, because I mean, yeah, Higher Tech can lose it, like if they roll a 1, they don't get it, but they can get 2 CP from it.
They can. However, I've always lost it and gained nothing from it. So, I know.
Fair enough.
Personal experience,
Fair enough.
I think this is better.
Anecdotal evidence doesn't count.
Exactly.
You're wrong.
And that is it for all of the team's equipment. So now we're going to go and take a look at, like, just kind of the theory crafting and the tactics that this team can employ on the kill zone just really demolish, because this team has just so much they can really do. Okay, now, moving into the tactics in theory crafting. This is where we kind of want to take a look at the team to really see what they can do. There's just so much to this team, and there's like so many cool ideas that depending on especially what you're playing against, like what you bring and how you play against it, really, really matters. So I think the first thing to really talk about here is like elites. Everyone is struggling with elites. Even elites are struggling against elites. So I think a great place to kind of start is like how do you play this into an elite team? And Brett, I'll let you kind of take the stage here.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, playing against elites, great question. Right now, obviously, that is tough for many things. So there are obviously there's a couple guys who, you know, stand out as being the potential elite killers, just obviously, and that's going to be your gunner and your heavy gunner, right? Like those just make sense on most teams.
Yeah,
obviously,
with the amount of piercing they have,
right? Like they have the ability to take piercing 2 weapons, which, you know, currently at the moment we're recording this, the top teams are able to reduce that down to 1 piercing 1.
But even piercing 1, like, it does hinder.
Oh, it absolutely helps. Absolutely does. And if you get a decent roll, which again, this team has a lot of stuff for, you know, being reliable, it's, you know, very possible you get in a decent amount of damage. So obviously in this case, we're talking about the blaster, which is the gunner's piercing 2 weapon, and then the wraith cannon, which is the piercing 2 on the heavy gunner. So those 2 obviously just have a lot of punch. Now, what I will say, though, is if you're on Into the Dark, in my experience, it's always been worth it to take the Wraith Cannon and then just to take the Shredder on the regular gunner. Because, I mean...
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, it's like, in my mind, the 3 things that kill elites are piercing, obviously, right? And then right behind that is crits, and then mortal wounds. So, you know, the Shredder is a crit machine like we talked about. It's got a lot of ways to just get, you know, 4 crits, basically, on Into the Dark. So, you know, with an average roll, it's able to, you know, at least get probably like 2 crits, because it's got the Rending and Lethal 5. So, it's kind of just melts that way. Other than that, though... And again, I like to kind of stray away from the snipers this edition, but the Fate Dealer is, you know, potentially could spike a roll, do a bunch of mortal wounds. That does exist. Obviously, it's not as mobile. But on Into the Dark, it's still definitely a threat that needs to be considered from an elite player.
For sure.
And then, of course...
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, sorry, I was just going to mention the other piercing option. Of course, the Starstorm Duelist, right? Like, he's got the ability to double shoot. You're talking about a piercing 2 pistol. It's also going to put in a lot of work on elites.
And doing that in melee ties them up as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, this team has a lot of power weapons, and like you mentioned before, like elites are still.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to.
Like power weapons are still going to hurt. Like even with damage reduction, like on a crit, you're still talking about doing like 5 damage, quite a bit, right? And
yeah, that's almost a third right there.
Right, and when you're looking for your trades, you know, as a mid-range team into elites, it's not easy to make good trades because it's like. You have like 1.5 models to their 1, right? So you still have to be really smart about them. But if you can like get a power weapon into like a non-melee elite operative, it's still, you're probably going to do a lot of work. And maybe not die. So
another thing that I think is super useful to think about here is because you're so mobile, on your primary you may want to go for tac op because it's very hard to deny, especially as we're talking about like Plant Banner. Very, very useful in this team. Like, you can move across the board pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I think I like to take the tac op as my primary most of the time. It's very easy with recon, like I said. Like, it's just easy to score, confirm kill, plant beacons. I mean, even if you wanted to do recover item, like, the team is fast enough to definitely get you, like, 6 points on the tac op itself, plus the primary. So, that's probably just what you do. I would say most of the time, like 99% of the time.
So, moving from elites to other specialist teams, what do you feel is a good way to go against like other like Eldar teams and such?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think this team's strengths against other mid-range teams are the fact that once again, each model has pretty reliable shooting in melee with ways to increase it, and they also have just a couple key models that make 2-for-1s possible, as well as some tech like the Wayseeker giving out that Justice Scratch. That's pretty huge against other like mid-range teams because you can probably take, you know, like say one of our guys with a power weapon, and you could put it up against something on the other team that's also pretty decent in melee. And I mean, just having that Justice Scratch makes that fight so much more favorable to you and makes the trade just better. Because it's like, if I can put somebody up in somebody's face, get a kill with taking like little to no damage, and then now I have something like in your backline that needs to be shot. Like that tech right there is what helps you a lot with dealing with other mid-range teams. Like you can be a little bit more tanky if you use it correctly. I will also say the Shade Runner is just great for threatening things that your opponent maybe hasn't considered because of how easy it is to get around a board with them.
Yeah, if you can kind of get the middle of the board, they can kind of go anywhere.
Right, or like with Vulcus, if you can get the strongholds.
Yeah, no, good point.
Like you can potentially, especially with the Shade Runner, you can potentially charge into something in the backlines that's like a good shooter of theirs. For example, right, if it was a Corsair's mirror match, you know, if I'm able to, in the deployment, maybe get my guys set up in a way where my Shade Runner can go down last, so I can, you know, kind of make his positioning unknown, and then try to move him up as far as I can, so the next turning point I can, like, blink pack into, like, say, the gunner, or the heavy gunner, right? Like, you're probably not going to take much damage back. You're probably getting the kill, and then you're just a nuisance back there. So
yeah, and denying them their gunners, who are probably the better operatives to take out your models.
Yeah, definitely.
Powerful.
Right, like anything with the 4-up save, right? Like shooting it is definitely...
it's the benefit.
Right, yeah. I mean, you're relying on 4-up saves. Of course, it's going to be swingy. Yeah, maybe it's the dice are in your favor, but I'd take that over fighting Corsairs, most of them anyway. So,
yeah.
Certainly looking to get your melee pieces into the shooters of the other mid-range teams is pretty big. Shade Runner's great at that.
Yeah, it's very powerful for that model. Like, it's incredible.
And another thing is too against mid-range is with the Fel Arc, with that interrupt in the stun too. That's also very scary against, you know, those other teams, because I mean, if you're talking about a 2 APL team, if you do get that 6 off, like what they do, they moved, or they, you know, whatever, maybe did an action or something, and then you've stopped the rest of their activation.
Not only that, but also your leader, the ability to interrupt with them too. Like,
well, right, that's the one I was mentioning. But yeah, that's true though, because the Kernite Hunter as well, same thing.
Sorry.
Like,
that's what.
There's two forms of interrupting. Most teams don't have any. Maybe they have one, if they're lucky. But this team has two. Yeah. So
that can really throw a wrench in somebody's plans there.
Yes, it absolutely can. It's a gotcha. It will catch people off guard, and again, in a mid-range matchup, if you can trade the effective pieces when you need to, or kill things, even better, kill things on their activation, like that makes the fight so much better for you.
For sure. And like that's one of the beauties of like a Nemesis Claw. That's one of the reasons I think they're so strong, is like they have that ability to interrupt, and just the ability to interrupt is such an interesting and unique mechanic, and the fact that this team has two sources of it is kind of crazy.
Definitely. And then, I mean, again, and I like this with every matchup, but that opportunistic fighters firefight ploy, if you even tie up a mid-range model, mid-range teams model with that, and just one guy falls back and you have only one guy within their control range, you can spike that roll and even injure a mid-range model, right? Like, it's that right there is just so good for tying up your models, and it doesn't even matter what model you tie them up with. It could be another model that sucks in fighting, right? But you tie them up, and then if they go to do a fallback, like, boom, take 2d3 damage, right?
Yeah, very strong.
Free damage.
And then, exactly. And then into Horde teams, what is kind of your preferred method of taking those out?
Yeah, Horde teams are... I don't want to say they're... I feel like it was probably harder last edition.
Yeah.
But in this edition, you really have to play cagey, I feel, early on in the game. Just because, obviously, they out-activate you. They might have some tricks as well up their sleeve to be really aggressive and try to get some early kills. But just focus on the spacing. Ensure you aren't setting anything up to get double killed. If you're getting double killed by a Horde team, it's going very, very badly for you. You need to be the one getting the double kills, and you need to realize which models have the ability to do that. Now, on this team, I think that's a lot of models into Horde teams.
No, thankfully that is one point in their favor, is that with a very small 5-up save 7-wound team, like, there's a lot of models you can double kill quite easily.
Absolutely, and you have the ability to give out, an APL. That's there. Mm-hmm. Your leader has the ability to just do another 1 AP action for free. Blanking on his name right now. Teleporty guy, Shade Runner,
yep.
He has the ability to, slicing attack over somebody on a move. Potentially do, let's say they do 4 damage. That's 2 on your D3 plus 2. That right there against a Horde team, against a 7-wound model, that's injuring it. And then, let's say you don't even go to kill that. You could just shoot something else with your shuriken pistol or your throwing knives or whatever, and potentially get a kill or injure another guy, whatever it is there. And now you've injured a guy and killed another. And you've moved up significantly while doing it.
Yeah, it's not quite a double kill, but injury really does kneecap Horde teams.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of things. If you're making a hit on 5s, right? Like, it's really makes you question if you want to try shooting something that's, a target you really want to kill with a 5-up on your weapon skill. It's like not super worth it. There's the potential to get some splash maybe with the Wayseeker's Lightning Strike.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that into Volcus in the compounds, that's very powerful, because a lot of Horde teams will kind of castle up to some degree. They'll have like commander, a comms, or a medic kind of all situated in those and use them for staging. So if you're able to get to a side and splash into that, that's 5-up, lethal 5-up right there.
Definitely. And there's no shame in playing back Turning Point 1. I do that a lot. I play back because we have the speed to move forward when we need it.
Yeah.
So you can kind of let your opponent, to some extent, play into you. And then, you use your 10 inches of movement to just fly up and go for a big play. Now, with that, though, the talk of the splash, we should mention this team has no blast. unless you take frags, which you could against, maybe against hordes it would be all right.
Yeah, I can see it being useful.
Yeah,
its uses there.
It could. But I definitely think that if you are able to just utilize your guys to, kind of be annoying and just like charge things, and you don't even necessarily have to kill them, but if it's already activated, just charge it.
Yeah, tie them up,
right? And then like maybe next turning point they fall back. Well, if you have the CP, try to injure it. Mm-hmm. Do something like that. Use your Kernite Hunter to interrupt important models. I like to try to deploy him in a way where I can, if there's a Melta, like I said before, interrupt the Melta. Because you're probably going to keep something alive. Like, if you can interrupt a Melta, it's great.
Melta is one of the scariest models Horde teams have. It's their big, like, damage dealer.
Exactly. So it's like, if you're going to make a trade, right? Like, Kernite Hunter, if you're doing a free charge to interrupt a Melta, get in there. Melta's probably not going to fight you, right? So you're probably just left in engagement range with it. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Then you activate, kill that Melta with your power weapon, and then charge something else. Because you can still charge, because your first charge was out of your activation.
Yeah.
So you can move around a lot, just tie things up, be really annoying, make yourself as hard to kill as possible, assuming the team doesn't have a way to shoot into engagement range, right? Like, that's a different can of worms, but...
RBDs and Ratlings are kind of the special circumstances there.
Right, Blooded can still do it too.
Oh, yep, that's right.
One way. Yeah, like, there's teams that can do it.
There are a few, but it's kind of niche. But be mindful of it.
Know that stuff when you're going into your matchup, hopefully. But...
other point for being annoying is, this team has a lot of stun. Just take stun grenades and be even more annoying. Like... If you can stun one or two models with a single stun grenade, that really, again, it's another wrench in the plans. Like, it really, really changes. And especially if you can get some of, like, the really powerful specialists, like a comms, a medic, a gunner of some kind. That really, really is like, oh, those are kind of the centerpiece models. Now I don't know what to do, because they can only do the one thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's two guys. The Wayseeker has his silent stun. Yeah. And then the leader can do he can get a stun on his pistol. So, yeah, with stun grenades, you got 4 sources of stun. It's you can really ruin somebody's plan.
So, moving from there, like, that's kind of like for each team, but there are also 3 different sets of terrain to kind of consider as well. So, is there any special tricks that you'd recommend kind of deploying in Volcus?
Yeah, so Volcus... So, all right, here's what I've kind of figured out with Volcus. The strongholds, they are quite long. A lot of teams can't really, unless they're 3 APL, they can't like move across the whole thing and be able to shoot something on the other side of it. Now, Corsairs have the luxury of having that free dash and a 7-inch move, so you can do that. On Volcus, I do like to stage things on like the doors of like on one side of the stronghold, and just have like a couple things set up to have the ability to move dash all the way to the other end, and then threaten things that are staging on the opposite side. Because a lot of times there's points in the strongholds, so it's very nice to be able to set things up, have multiple threats, potentially interrupts as well, and Just there's a lot of little nooks and crannies you can tuck your guys into. So I like to play very cagey on Volcus turn 1. Set up very defensively.
I think that's solid advice just for Volcus in general, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. Like I mentioned, the Shade Runner is just fantastic for pressuring strongholds. There's a lot of ways
especially the stronghold with the 3 stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you know you're playing against a team that has something they want to put up there, like, you just keep the Shade Runner on that side of the board, get him ready. Because even if he can't, like, charge the model that's up there, he can probably do his slicing attack to do some damage to it.
Oh, that's a good point as well.
Right, because you don't have to kill it, right? Maybe you can just, depending on what it is, maybe you just injure it, and then, okay, well, maybe now it doesn't have as much to do. Maybe it can't get away. Next turning point, you just do it again and kill it. You know, like you don't have to switch to engage to do this. It's just a reposition action. So he's very good for countering things that'll go up there. Of course, there's a lot of ability to stick your power weapons inside the strongholds as well, near the walls. That way you get the fight first if somebody were to charge you from outside. Yeah, you never want to be fought first with a power weapon, right? Like that's scary.
that hurts.
Right.
That hurts a lot. All right, so moving on to the next kind of big format is Into the Dark. This team is phenomenal in Into the Dark, specifically with the Shade Runner as well. The ability to move through and across walls is just so... you cannot understate how useful that is.
Definitely. He's like... I feel like you kind of position him kind of centrally, and then you make him go wherever you need him. Because like it's so easy to reposition him. You don't care where he is. He just goes through the walls. So...
Yep.
Otherwise, though, yeah, we get a lot of Lethal 5 stuff. I shouldn't say a lot, but we get, like, some pretty critical Lethal 5 stuff, like the Lightning Strike attack, the Shredder gets the Lethal 5. Like I said, that thing's just a crit machine. We have a lot of strong melee operatives that can easily just hide behind corners, and then with a 7-inch move, I mean, going through the hatchways, so you still have a 6-inch regular move, or an 8-inch charge. Like, it doesn't really slow you down much.
Now, another thing to think about is you can set up your guys to guard and hatchway fight pretty easily, too, with their power weapons. Like, sticking those guys and, like, getting them to points where the enemy has to come to you can be very, very useful.
Definitely. And, I mean, along kind of the same line, too, with the Heavy Gunner and the Fate Dealer as well. This is also one of those situations where maybe you move dash them and then go on guard. Because now there's not the deprecation to the ballistic skill anymore on guards.
Yeah,
so it's like,
that's a good point.
Like, you can get the stationary profile of your Fate Dealer, other than the silent part, right? But you can still get hitting on 2s with the devastating 3. Maybe that makes it a little bit... maybe that redeems it a little bit Under the Dark. I'm still hesitant, but... I mean, with your... Dude, like, think about, like, you take a Wraith Cannon, you move, dash it, and go on guard. Like, that's scary for... a lot of things, assuming they don't get like a non-reciprocal obscuring shot or whatever. So
no, very, very powerful there, especially if you can do that on... Brett is notorious for this when we play Into the Dark. Those long open rooms that you'll occasionally find with a point somewhere in the middle, you just open a door, put him on guard, and good luck moving into that room with him just sitting there.
Yeah, exactly. It's very threatening, especially if your opponent is not using barricades to the best of their ability.
You really gotta be mindful of barricades.
Yeah, I mean, we can place ours a little bit farther forward if we want, because we have the move dash to get there and still be able to do stuff, but that's not a thing for every team, right? So you kind of consider maybe how maneuverable your opponent's team is when you're placing even your own barricades, because that can have a lot of play with what you're going to do in that room.
Barricades are useful, and especially Into the Dark. They are 100% worth taking.
Right, for sure. The Warp Fold, too, I'd like to mention. The thing with the Wayseeker swapping the places of 2 models, that I feel like that has a lot of very useful play on Into the Dark. I know I've used it in a couple of games for moving people who were supposed to get a kill in a room. Say, for example, like you mentioned with the Heavy Gunner looking down a big, long room. Maybe he shoots. Maybe he gets his guard shot and he shoots, but he doesn't quite get the kill. Okay, well, if I have the Wayseeker nearby, and I have another guy who needs to activate yet, I could potentially just now swap their places, and then have that model try to shoot and kill whatever he couldn't. Right,
good point.
So there's options to kind of move guys around.
I think you have to be pretty mindful of that, though.
You definitely do. That's one you have to really consider a lot more.
Yeah.
Like, your Wayseeker has to be set up in a good spot to do it. But it's a thing you can do.
For sure. And then on to the redhead stepchild of Kill Team Terrain, Beta Decima.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I haven't played on it, and I don't think Brett has either.
No, but you know what, though? The thing is really, it's the same thing. Shade Runner's great, right? You don't have to worry about climbing. Just send him towards the big furnace, right? Like, just have him teleport up there to, like, turn 1 if you can. Get control of it. Everybody else is, same thing that they're always going to do. Have the gunners take up those long positions. Have your power weapons and all the close range guys just, stage them on barricades where you can. And then just fling them forward, obviously depending on the matchup. But Beta Decima, I think in a lot of senses, is pretty cut and dry for the tricks that you have. I think it's just a lot less complicated than Into the Dark and Focus, so...
Yeah, it's similar, but slightly different.
Yeah.
And then, lastly, we've given a lot of tips on how to fight teams, but I think it would be remiss not to talk about how to counter Corsairs, as they are a tricky team. A lot of their models are really powerful, but right now we're kind of talking about is a lot of teams, like, if you can pick apart just a few models, the team kind of crumbles, and we kind of want to give, like, the top 3 models to be careful about and, like, try to pick out as early as possible if you're going against them.
Yeah, and I think for me, the top 3 are ones that I've mentioned many times. And I don't think this is in any particular order. I think these 3 are just equally, like, important to kill. And that's going to be the Felarch, of course, because of his interrupt is just very powerful. He just has powerful weapons. He's got a free 1 AP action, right? Just great to kill. Next would be the Kernite Hunter, because of his interrupt ability is very powerful, very good piece of tech.
Those 2 interrupts really, really do a lot.
They really do. And the Kernite Hunter being able to strike first without using the bird as well.
And he has a fantastic melee profile.
Yes, you want to just take care of him. And then the other one is going to be the Way Seeker, and that's because he is, not only does he have some good shooting attacks, but like his abilities are just so useful. He's the one who gives out the Justice Scratch. If you kill him, it's gone.
Commandos players know exactly just how powerful a Justice Scratch is, and the fact that they can, like, again, throw one out every turn, and it doesn't cost a CP. It's just an action. So useful. Yeah,
it's incredibly useful. He is just such a massive part of the team and keeping them alive. So if you're able to, a smart player is going to be keeping them back. But if you get the opportunity, charging this guy, fighting him with someone who's decent, his melee's all right, but it's not the best. So that's probably your better route of killing him. Just be prepared to probably lose whatever does that. But I think those 3 are my top 3. Like, I think those are the ones that if you can kill those in a somewhat decent time, like, you'll be sitting all right.
It will help you a lot in the long run. Honorary mention, Shade Runner, just so useful.
Absolutely, right? Like, we talked about it so much. I think it's just the fact that with the Shade Runner, you're almost dive bombing it into a lot of situations. So, maybe
it's going to take a lot of damage because, like, depending on what you throw it into.
Right, like, it's incredibly useful, but I feel like once you use it, like, once you slingshot it into something, it's probably going to get taken out relatively easy.
Good players will see that and try to shift to kill it, because keeping that around is just, you don't want that.
Right, you have to play so far back to avoid its threat range. It's just, if you can bait it out and kill that thing. Yeah, I definitely think it's not as important as the other 3, but it is certainly annoying to deal with.
All right. So that is our kind of look at all the theory crafting and thoughts. It's pretty, it really blows my mind just how much this team can do, and just taking a look at all their abilities and, like, going into things that just have so much that they're capable of doing. So we've gone through and we've looked at their abilities. It's just truly incredible. But now we're going to take about closing thoughts, talk about some, like, interactions we've had with this team, and then we kind of want to hear from you guys and see what you guys think. So, moving into our closing thoughts. This team, there's just so much to it. Genuinely, it's one of those teams that is just so interesting because you can kind of do... It kind of does everything, and it does everything very, very well, I feel. It has great shooting, it's got great fighting. Its abilities of the models are super cool and flavorful. I really admire this team. I've played 2 games with them, and they've been very fun. Brett, I know you've played a lot more actually with this team.
I definitely have. I've played a lot of games with them. I mean, and at different levels, of course. More casual games, they're fun to play with. And then, I mean, I brought them to Worlds. I was comfortable enough with them.
Yeah.
And into the current meta as well. They did all right. I went 5-5.
Yeah.
And at that level, I think that's a pretty good telling of where they're at. There were some other people who also took them, and at least one placed better than myself. So that's pretty good standings for the team in general. I think once those top teams kind of come down a little bit with some changes, Corsairs will probably be sitting like pretty good.
Yeah, I can't really foresee them receiving a lot of nerfs, to be honest. Like, they seem pretty solid right now.
I agree. I really don't know what would change with like the coming balanced data slate. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what they would think, but I certainly don't think the team is too much or underpowered by any means. I think they're
no.
Yeah, they're all right. You
know. No, they're challenging to fight, but in like that fun way, as like they got so many opportunities. Like you really need to be thinking about what your operative is going to do and how your opponent, the Corsairs, are going to react to that and how they're going to, because like the interrupts and just all of the shenanigans they have, like again, so many like toolbox things they can do. It's kind of impressive.
For sure. They're another tricky elf team, right? So
one of many. Put them in the pile.
Exactly. I mean, head of the Archon. Realistically, getting a couple games against them because they are, probably gonna become a little bit better, I would imagine, as the top teams come down, and so we might be seeing more of them in a competitive sense. And better to just bite the bullet and learn how to play against them now before you go to like something competitive and see a bunch of them and have no idea what you're doing. Yeah, like just figure out all the gotchas now. Hopefully what we talked about helped. I hope it did.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I feel like we did a really good job at looking at everything. But if we missed something, please continue the conversation in the comments. We would love to hear your thoughts. And if you have questions, please post them. We'd be more than happy to answer. These guys have a lot of moving parts, and it's kind of... I feel like we did a good job explaining everything, but there are a million edge case scenarios with this game and with this team in particular.
Of course, lots of what ifs, lots of interesting, cases and interactions with different rules as well. So yeah, please let us know. We'll try to get to them as soon as we can.
For sure. And another good place to discuss these things are in our Discord. It is free to join for anyone who is interested, and we have a channel for every team. So if you guys of like-minded individuals who are like, we all play Corsairs, you guys can group up and just really do the theory crafting and kind of expand on what we've talked about today.
Talk about how much you hate all the other elf teams. I don't know.
Yeah, there's plenty to dislike. Another thing we would like you guys to do is we will be putting up a poll when this video goes out, and we want to hear from you guys on what team you would want us to talk about next. We have 4 we would like to talk about, but we want to hear which one you want to hear about first. So our first one is Wrecker Crew, the new orcs. Then we have the Ratlings and Ogren. Next up is the Plague Marines, and then lastly we have Kinban. So please go and vote on that poll, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody, even just listening this far or interacting with the poll. All this stuff is super helpful for us, so we really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys like what you heard, and should be a lot more on the way, so we appreciate everything.
Yeah, and if you want to continue helping us, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and all that. And thank you so very much for listening. This is us at Six-Sided Legion, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.